Being a fool is one of the basic ingredients and incidents to the maintenance of the slavery system. For example, if you told a slave that he must perform in getting out our crops, and he knows the language well, he would know that our crops didn't mean our crops, and the slavery system would break down. For he would relate on the basis of what our crops really meant. So you have to be careful in setting up the new language for the slave will soon be in your house, talking to you as man to man. And that is death to our economic system.
Then there's a question that comes to my mind. Why do they hate us? And what have we done to them?
Those that hate us, they hate us because they're instructed to hate us, because they've been manipulated.
Parents are outraged by a school assignment. Tony Ayala shows us why.
Fifth graders studying the colonial era given an option to create an advertisement. One suggestion, a poster for a slave auction. Several students did just that. Some parents who saw the posters while visiting the school were offended, many reacting on Facebook. Posters, math homework, slave auction skits, slave songs, all have raised anger and concern.
Parents near Atlanta, Georgia, they are outraged this afternoon, and it all has to do with their kids' math homework. Check out a couple of the problems third graders at Beaver Creek Elementary had to do. Each tree had 56 oranges. If 8 slaves picked them equally, then how much would each slave pick? Also a question, if Frederick got 2 beatings per day, how many beatings did he get in 1 week? The teachers were trying to incorporate history lessons into the math lesson. The school has since destroyed those worksheets and promised to work with the teacher who came up with it to make sure it doesn't happen again. What would you do if your child came home with homework like this?
In today's society, there's a bit of confusion as to the difference between an understanding and an understanding. An understanding is something that 2 or more parties agree upon and how it should be regarded when it comes to the comprehension of said information. An understanding is something that is attached to the core of an individual, and it is connected to their central or innermost parts. It's an understanding, meaning that it's not easily moved. Your understanding is the master of your mind and your body, and it gives you commands based upon memory. It is the master, the one who has ownership or control, the employer or the captain of a merchant ship. And most recently, it is known as the owner of a slave. A slave is someone who is subservient to or controlled by another, one who is made subject by the control of a specified influence. A slave is originally a Slav, and because of betacism within particular languages, it was actually pronounced as Slav, where the sound of the V and the B becomes interchangeable. And a Slav is something that can be used as building material. Sometimes it describes an untidy person, often with the implications of being dull or slow, as in mud, but when it is diluted, it can easily be imposed upon. And anyone with the ability to create can become a Slav master, also known as a slave master. The slave master deals with the implantation and driving forces that directs the outcome and the final product of particular slaves. There are some people out there that will state wholeheartedly that our people are broken, and my reason for stating this is the stone which the builders rejected can easily become the cornerstone, as all it takes is a master builder to restore all things that seem broken. Historically speaking, this was known. there was an act created of 1790 which regulated the trade and intercourse with Indian tribes. But that particular act had a 2-year expiration date on it. So in 1792, another act was created. Section 8 of that act states, "And it be further enacted, that no purchase or grant of lands of any title or claim thereto from any Indians or nation or tribe of Indians within the bounds of the United States shall be of any validity in law or equity, unless the same be made by a treaty or convention." In other words, a device must be set in place so that that particular land can be regained at a later date, even though it has been purchased. Section 9 of the same act states, "And it be further enacted that in order to promote civilization among the friendly Indian tribes and to secure the continuance of their friendship, it shall and may be lawful for the President of the United States to cause them to be furnished with useful domestic animals and implements of husbandry, and also to furnish them with goods or money in such proportions as he shall judge proper, and to appoint such persons from time to time as temporary agents to reside among the Indians." Now, the importance of such matters come into effect once it is realized that those who control the trade and intercourse of an individual or a group of individuals can also control how much those individuals are able to make financially, generationally. And this is in 1792. So when studies are being done and released in these modern times, do note that those who grant the studies are already fully aware of the results. Fast forward 100 years later, the question arises on what to do about the Indian problem. Not the Negro problem, but the Indian problem. And I say this because the term Negro wasn't legally implemented until 1900. So in 1892, when state boards met 100 years later to discuss the problems at the time and how they should handle them, they wanted to know what to do with the Indian problem. And in Bilderberg fashion, the National Conference of Charities and Correction came together to discuss Indian policy regarding this issue. One of the speakers on this discussion was Richard Pratt, famously known for his Carlisle Indian School and for stating the phrase, "Kill the Indian and save the man." What is important to note is, right before Richard Pratt created the Carlisle Indian School, he was a commanding officer for Indian Scouts, as he was part of the 10th United States Cavalry, the segregated Black Regular Army regiments known collectively as the Buffalo Soldiers. And so, I'm going to read a few excerpts from the speech given by Richard Pratt in June of 1892 at this conference. Richard Pratt states, "A great general has said that the only good Indian is a dead one, and that high sanction of his destruction has been an enormous factor in promoting Indian massacres. In a sense, I agree with the sentiment, but only in this, that all the Indian there is in the race should be dead. Kill the Indian in him and save the man. We are just now making a great pretense of anxiety to civilize the Indians. I use the word pretense purposely and mean it to have all the significance it can possibly carry. Washington believed that commerce freely entered into between us and the Indians will bring about their civilization. And Washington was right. He was followed by Jefferson, who inaugurated the reservation plan. Jefferson's reservation was to be the country west of the Mississippi, and he issued instructions to those controlling Indian matters to get the Indians there, and let the Great River be the line between them and the whites. Any method of securing removal, persuasion, purchase, or force was authorized. Jefferson's plan became permanent policy. The removals have generally been accomplished by purchase, and the evils of this are far greater than those of all others combined. Now, I want to take a moment and explain what is meant by this statement, because generally hearing this, the first thing that comes to mind is the purchase of land, meaning people would assume that by government agents buying Indian land would then force the Indians to have to move, and they believed that this was the Indians' greatest hardship. But what is really being stated deals with the purse chase or the purchase. According to Oxford, a purse is the money possessed or available to a person or country. This is the money which is available to trade through intercourse. They send people on a purse chase, and of course, that contributes to race. But the real generational wealth, which is our children, they send them on a purr chase. You know, like when a cat purrs? They are in a daze of some sort, and they use several different tactics to achieve this so that they are systematically chasing what makes them happy or feel good, to control the mind and the gut, which is the second brain. The definition of purchase or purchase is to pull or haul something by means of a mechanical device. It's something brought, and brought is the past participle of bring, which means to carry, convey, lead, or cause to go along to another place. So back to Richard Pratt's speech, as he goes on to say, "I wish if I can to make you see the purchase system as I see it, to have you understand the enormous crime we have committed and are committing against the Indians through this system." Richard Pratt also goes on to say, but more potent and far-reaching is the destruction caused by the debasing influences of idleness. Immorality and disease which pass to the children are doing their daily work. And the once powerful tribe, originally as magnificent specimens of manhood as I ever looked upon, is becoming extinct through influences and forces thrust upon it by a so-called humane Christian government. The worst of it all is that this is being done under the pretext of justice and righteousness, and now more largely than ever.
In the National Museum of the American Indian, looking at this magnificent Anishinaabe outfit. This is a complicated moment. This is about 1790.
Part of the relationships between the British and their native allies would include opportunities for mutual gift giving. And many of the gifts were clothing. So the leaders on the Anishinaabe would receive military coats and other elements of uniforms. Several British officers received complete outfits like this one.
When we look at the outfit closely, we see this is part of an international trade network.
The cotton shirt was in fact manufactured in Britain. The cotton the shirt was made from was grown and exported from the subcontinent of India, brought to Britain, then milled in their factories with an eye to its export to North America. So the length of the shirt, the use of that floral patterning, all is intended to appeal to their native trade partners.
So this is being manufactured specifically to the styles that the Native Americans would be receptive to.
Exactly.
Now, I'm sure that most of what was spoken about in this speech a little over 100 years ago remain the same today, as there are still forces that try to take charge of our trade and intercourse, promoting idleness through different devices, which in turn creates the slob. And through that action, the slob master easily creates the slave. The slave. The slave. I'm just here to make you think.